Well, good evening, everyone. I hope you're excited as I am to be here and be part of our first of our four-part series of our cattle carcass training webinar hosted by AMS Agriculture Marketing Service, Livestock and Poultry Programs. I'm Jody Pitcock and I'll be your moderator tonight. We have a lineup of great speakers coming to us today from CME, and we cannot wait to get into their presentations. But before we do that, we have a few housekeeping items that we would like to share. This session is going to be recorded, and we will, but however, the recorded version of this session will be available on the Cattle Carcass Training Center website for a future reference, or use it as a tool. A link will be provided at the end of this session. Do want to let the participants know that you are in listen mode only. The participants may ask questions throughout the session. Just simply click on the Q&A icon at the bottom of the screen and submit your question, and we will answer that at the question and answer time. At the completion of the series, the speakers will be addressing those questions that come into the chat. So please submit those questions when you get a chance. Today's session will last approximately an hour and a half. Now that is depending on how many questions we get for sure, but we're looking at somewhere around 1 hour and 30 minutes. You will receive a follow-up email. It's a participant survey within the next couple of days. Your feedback will help us build future Cattle Carcass Training Center events and activities that benefit the U.S. beef industry, so your responses are appropriate. So before we get into tonight's speakers, I'd like to introduce our Cattle Carcass Training Centers. In the 2018 Farm Bill directed USDA to establish regional cattle and carcass training centers in order to collaborate with industry and academia to provide educational and training opportunities for stakeholders interested in official quality and yield grading of fed cattle and beef carcasses along with feeder cattle in the United States. The objective of these activities is to limit the subjectivity in the application of beef carcass standards, live cattle standards, and to build confidence in the price of the producer's cattle and to provide investors more assurance in the cattle delivery system. In September of 2019, USDA announced and selected 3 locations to serve as these cattle carcass training centers. One being at West Texas A&M University in Canyon, Texas. The other in Colorado State University in Fort Collins, Colorado. And then the USDA Meat Animal Research Center in Clay Center, Nebraska. In collaboration with these partners, AMS seeks to provide a variety of educational resources, events, and projects to support the beef industry's knowledge and understanding of the cattle delivery system and the role that producers, feeders, processors, and USDA play in bringing high-quality American beef to market. The first cattle carcass training event was held in person at West Texas A&M University in October of 2019. Unfortunately, 2 additional in-person events were canceled due to the COVID-19 pandemic this year. So adapting to this situation, USDA and the 3 cattle carcass training centers agreed to instead collaboration on a virtual industry outreach event. In this series of webinars, an expert of speakers from these organizations, as well as the CME Group, will cover an exciting array of topics to broaden participants' understanding of how live cattle and carcass are evaluated for quality and yield, how these factors play into CME specifications for live delivery and carcass delivery, and the relationship between cattle production practices and the grading and application and producer pricing. I would like to invite you to visit the Cattle Carcass Training website, which there will be a link at the end of this presentation with that website to learn more about the center and upcoming events. So without further ado, let me introduce our first speaker of tonight. First speaker tonight is Ms. Sarah Calhoun. Ms. Calhoun is the Director of Agriculture Products, managing the livestock business line of CME Group. Ms. Calhoun grew up in the livestock industry and actually spent some time working in DC as a lobbyist for the cattle industry, focusing on cattle market issues prior to joining CME Group in May of 2018. Please welcome Ms. Sarah Calhoun.
Hi, I'm Sarah Calhoun, and I manage the livestock business at CME Group. I'm here to introduce to you the CME Group's cattle contracts, and we're thrilled to have the opportunity to be here. CME Group's roots go back to 1848, when the Chicago Board of Trade was established. This was in the middle of westward expansion, when settlers began farming the Midwest, where they had the means of production. However, they did not have the population that needed their crops like those in the eastern United States. Farmers would haul their crops to sell to merchants and processors along the docks in Chicago. To ensure their long hauls from the farms out west were financially founded, producers began entering forward contracts with grain merchants and processors. The earliest of these forward contracts were recorded in 1851 and gained popularity. At this point in time, trades occurred in the docks and in the streets near the Chicago and Illinois rivers. As the market became more efficient, rather than customized bilateral forward contracts, the Chicago Board of Trade, or CBOT, formalized the development of standardized agreements, or contracts called futures. With these standardized agreements, the Chicago Board of Trade created the first futures clearing operation and began requiring performance bonds, or margin, to be posted by buyers and sellers in its grain markets. In 1870, the Chicago Board of Trade developed the first octagonal trading pits, and 15 years later, to accommodate the rapid growth of futures trading, in 1885, the Chicago Board of Trade was built. The building was built at LaSalle and Jackson, which was at the time Chicago's tallest commercial structure and first structure with the new technology of electric light. Then in 1898, the Chicago Butter and Egg Board opened, and in 1919, it changed its name to then be recognized as the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. The CBOT and CME merged in 2006 to become CME Group, and then also included the New York Mercantile Exchange. And since the transition to electronic trading, CME Group has solidified itself to be the world's leading and most diverse derivatives exchange. We've got an average daily volume of roughly 15.4 million contracts that are traded across the exchange, and an average daily volume of 1.6 contracts in the agriculture space, which includes 157,000 that are traded in livestock daily. But today we're here to talk about cattle. And while Chicago had established itself as the benchmark for futures, specifically in grains, from the Civil War to the 1920s, Chicago was also the world's largest meatpacking center and headquarters of the industry. Just as in grains, this was due to its location on Lake Michigan and proximity to the rivers and canals to allow transportation of meat to the populations out east. With the invention and extension of railroads, the livestock raised in the Great Plains, Chicago packing companies built packing plants and in branches in Kansas City, Omaha, Sioux City, Wichita, Denver, and Fort Worth. The first large-scale commercial feeding operations began in the early 1960s. And to keep up with the commercial industry, the Western Live Cattle Contract began trading on the Chicago Mercantile Exchange in November of 1964. The original contract specs included a contract size of 25,000 pounds with a variance of 5%, with par weights of 1,000 pounds to 1150 with a 61% yield, or 1151 to a 1,300 pound animal with a 62% yield. Par delivery was in Chicago, which still had its stockyards and meat packing operations, or a delivery in Omaha with a 75% discount, 75-cent discount per hundredweight, with a daily price limit of $1.50 per hundredweight. Futures contracts are settled at expiration one of two ways. Cash settled to an index, which is the case for feeder cattle, or they're physically delivered, which is the case for live cattle. In delivery, if you are long a futures position, which that means that means to purchase, you will take delivery, thus receiving cattle. And this happens if the futures price is more attractive to purchase cattle than on the cash market. And if you're short a futures position, meaning to sell, you will make delivery, thus delivering cattle, which happens if the futures price is more attractive to sell cattle than on the cash market. At any point before expiration, however, a futures position can be offset, meaning you can take the opposite position of the futures to essentially cancel out the position that you currently hold. So if you're short a position, you can offset with a long position, or if you're long, you can offset with a short position. However, the majority of futures positions are offset before contract's expiration. This chart shows the cattle on feed report from January and also the top 20 commercial feedlots in the US. As you can see, most of the commercial cattle, fed cattle, are located in the stretch from the Texas Panhandle up through Kansas, Nebraska, Iowa, and Colorado. And while there are large feed yards and lots of cattle out in Arizona, California, and Idaho, the vast majority of commercial feedlots are across the Great Plains and the Corn Belt. This is relevant for this slide showing CME's live cattle delivery points. The criteria for a facility to become certified delivery point is that it must be within a location of 225 road miles from at least 2 approved slaughter plants. Commercial feedlots are located where the cattle are either grown, the cattle feed is either grown or easily transported. That's why the majority of the major packing facilities are located in that region as well. And the territories include Colorado, with Iowa, Minnesota, and South Dakota, up through Kansas, Nebraska, and the Texas, Oklahoma, and New Mexico. And now my colleagues, Jim and Laura, will take a deeper dive into the technical aspects of the live cattle contract and the delivery process. We look forward to answering any questions at the end of today's presentation. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Sarah. I really enjoyed that history of the CME Group and the cattle contract. I find it very interesting that you mentioned that the first CME cattle contract was November 30th of 1964. So if my math serves me right, here in about another week and a half, no, 2 weeks actually, we will be celebrating a 56th birthday for the cattle contract. That I think is very ironic that we're hosting this event in basically the same time of the year when that contract first was made available to public. So really appreciate that. Now we'll move on to our next speaker. Our next speaker tonight is Mr. Jim Sullivan. Jim currently serves as the Director of the Commodity Research and Products Development. He is responsible for managing and researching current and potential new products offered by CME Group, not only on the livestock, but also in the dairy markets. Mr. Sullivan has been in the futures and derivatives industry since 2004, and he was a trader on the floor before joining CME Company in 2010. and Mr. Sullivan is based in Chicago. Please welcome Jim Sullivan.
Good evening. I'm Jim Sullivan, CME Group Research and Product Development. I oversee livestock and dairy products at CME. And in addition to researching and identifying new potential futures contracts for the exchange, I also oversee the research and product maintenance on existing contracts. And since the live cattle futures contract is a deliverable contract, it is one that requires, pretty regular analysis, evaluation, and changes. It's been a deliverable contract since the 1960s when it was first launched, and it's one of our most successful agricultural contracts. So today, what I wanted to go over are some of the contract specifications regarding delivery of cattle. Also want to walk through a couple of the noteworthy changes that are set to take effect in February of 2021. And then I will walk through high-level delivery procedures before I turn it over to my colleague Laura on the clearing side to dig deeper, even deeper on the delivery process. So as you can see on the slide here, live delivery is pretty much the most important or the most common method of delivery through futures. About 90% of all of our deliveries are live graded versus 10% that are carcass deliveries. So we'll start there. When we talk about par delivery, it's important to note par delivery is just it's where we're setting the target. Okay, so the target is currently 40,000 pounds of yield grade 3, 65 choice, 35 select quality steers or heifers. The minimum weight is 1,050 pounds for both steers and heifers, and the upper level is 1,350 for heifers and 1,500 for steers. The par delivery unit average hot yield is set at 63%. Now, as I said, that's the target. You can, knowing that animals are quite different, there are adjustments, should you have in your load stuff that is either better than par or less than par. So steers that are weighing greater than 1,500 pounds are deliverable up to 1,550 pounds. And that is the current spec, which is going to change rather soon. We'll get into that in a little bit. Hot yields, yield grades, and quality grades are also, you can be better or less than par, and they'll get associated premiums and discounts. It's worth noting in this section, obviously there's several USDA reports that we use to apply premiums and discounts. So for instance, we have one of the most important is the XB 403 report, the box beef report. From that, we get the choice select spread that really sets the tone for our delivery, right? So it's the live equivalent choice select spread. And from there, that's the baseline that other premiums and discounts are applied. We also look to the LS 441, which is the byproduct drop value report. And we use that, when you have condemned livers and stuff like that. And then lastly, the CT 169 report, which is the 5-area premiums and discounts report, which is how we apply when you have deliveries that are above or less than par. There are some undeliverable characteristics worth noting. On a live delivery, estimated hot yield less than 60% is not deliverable. Any unmerchantable, crippled, sick, damaged, otherwise, unsatisfactory condition, as judged by the USDA grader, not deliverable. And then lastly, it's really only beef cattle, so no dairy, heiferettes, cows, and the like. As I said, we also have delivery on a carcass basis. It's less common, but it is an option. Again, par 40,000 pounds, yield grade 3, 65-35 is the current par spec for quality. Weights are at par from 600 to 900 pounds. And again, the par delivery unit average hot yield is 63%. Notable adjustments come in on carcass deliveries for individuals less than 600 or carcasses greater than 900. And just like live delivery, hot yields, yield grades, and quality grades can be adjusted. And then other notable adjustments on carcass side, hard bone, dark cutter, and stuff ungradable characteristics subject to discounts. Same thing on the undeliverable side. The one main difference really to note on carcass delivery is animals with prominent hump on the forepart of the body estimated to exceed 2 inches will get them removed, and they're not deliverable. So, as I said before, we have some changes coming up. The February 2021 contract that are very notable. We are changing the par quality grade spec. It's presently, for this last delivery period in December, 65-35 choice select. That is moving to 70-30, beginning with the delivery period of the February 2021 contract. As you can see on this slide, we have made several changes to the quality grade over the last couple of years. And the reason why, as you can look on the chart here on the right, the increase in quality grade in the U.S. Beef cattle herd is remarkable. And so it's important that the par spec of our deliverable contract, it needs to be set accordingly. It needs to be, trying to track with the underlying cash market. So, as you see, the dotted red line is the current choice spec, 65, and the national average is 5 to 7 percentage points higher than that for a while now. So we're moving it up to the yellow dotted line of 70%. With that, we also are making some changes for deliverable steer weights. Par is going to stay at the upper bound of 1,500 pounds. We will actually, though, move the total or the upper bound will move from 1,550 to 1,600. So what you will see beginning with February 2021, steers are deliverable up to 1,500 pounds. Then anything from 1,500 to 1,575 are discount equal to the 900 to 1,000 pound carcass factor on the CT169, as you see to the right. And then any steer that is 1,575 to 1,600 also deliverable, but subject to the 1,000 to 1,050 pound carcass premium discount here from CT169. As I mentioned before, we set that choice select spread, which starts the process. Then when the grading sheets come back from the USDA, Laura's team punches all the numbers into a sheet like this that will determine, ultimately what the final payment is. So on the left, 65-35 current invoice calculation. On the right is a new one. Is showing you have an additional weight category at the bottom. So we have this on our website. It's called the Live Cattle Delivery Manual, put together a couple of years ago, and it's a great resource. So I thought I'd walk through the delivery manual from the perspective of who the short or the long in the delivery process. So again, we'll start with live delivery since that's the most common. So if you are short, right, so you have sold futures and intend to deliver cattle through your futures position. You are responsible for contacting and scheduling with the livestock yard to ensure that they can accommodate your delivery. That's important because, you know, these yards have sales, and so they have days which they deemed blackout days, so they're not able to accommodate a delivery of cattle through our futures. So it's important that that is locked down. All of the freight costs are the responsibility of you, the seller, the short. You also are responsible for affidavits attesting that the cattle are born and raised in the United States. If they are heifer delivery, you have two additional ones, the estrus suppression additive and open protocol. So 9 a.m. the day of the delivery, by 9 a.m., not 9:01, not 9:05, but by 9 a.m., you got to be ready. You have to all be penned, sorted, and ready for presentation for the grader. This is really important, and I think generally what is the best way to do it is, getting there at least an hour or two early to make sure you get everything set up. Because if you're not ready by 9 a.m., you can be penalized. So if you fail to present, acceptable loads, and you're turned away and you got to come back the next day, you're going to be penalized 3 cents per pound for that day, and however many days it takes you to present an acceptable load. Also, if you get there and you're just barely ready at 9, but you're really still kind of not prepared, you haven't sorted, you're really slowing it down, you're putting the animals at risk, you're putting the graders at risk, and it's just a bad thing. There's an additional penalty of 1.5 cents per pound that can apply. So par delivery, 40,000 pounds. We talked about that stuff before. The weight, steers 1050 to 1550 currently, 1050 to 1600 starting in February. Heifers remain at 1050 to 1350, and 63% hot yield. Worth noting, we allow delivery of steers and we allow delivery of heifers. However, each load has to be all steers or all heifers. We do not allow mixed loads. If you are taking live delivery and you are the long, you have purchased the futures, you are taking the cattle, you have the ability to schedule carcass delivery. We'll get into that in a little bit. You have to obviously schedule trucking to take the cattle from the yard once the delivery is completed. And there is a penalty that could be assessed to the long should you, let's say, if you're chewing the ear out of the grader off, you're kind of trying to slow it down or interject yourself too much into the process, at the discretion of the USDA grader, you can be penalized 3 cents per pound. Days for live delivery. So generally, any delivery that goes through is going to be completed 8 business days following that tender date. With the notable difference being if the delivery is a result of the last trading day of the contract, then that delivery will occur between the 8th and the 11th business day following the last trade date. We do have the ability to allow it as late as 12 to 14 days beyond that as sort of an emergency, but we've not used that, and really I don't anticipate that happening, but it's there should we need it. Now we'll go into the carcass delivery. Again, not as common, but it does happen from time to time. What happens, so if you are the short, you are delivering the cattle, and the long has determined that they would like to take the delivery carcass. You are to deliver them to the approved slaughter plant that corresponds to the original livestock yard, which will be no more than 225 road miles from that original yard. As the short, you are responsible for the freight unless The long will be responsible if that yard, or excuse me, if that plant ends up being farther from the original delivery point than the feed yard. On the third business day following the tender, you will be notified as the short that the long has decided to take delivery of Carcass. And it is at this time that the short, you can elect to deliver as a large lot. You, as the short, have to contact the plant to determine the arrival time. And again, you have to have the affidavits that we mentioned before. You can't have mixed loads and the stuff like that. The same, we talked about the PAR and how USDA 169 report determines the premiums and discounts. Notable penalty: if you are the short and you fail to deliver the required quantity of cattle, you're going to be subject to a 1.5 cent per pound penalty for each day until you've completed your obligations. As the long in a carcass delivery, again, you are the one that determines. You have elected to do this. You have to schedule with the plant to make sure that they can accommodate you, and you need to provide all of that relevant contact information to CME Clearinghouse. Cost of freight could be your responsibility as well if you're the long, as we talked about before. Delivery days for carcass delivery. If delivery is any day besides last trading date, then the delivery will occur between the 4th and 8th business day following that tender. If it's the result of last trading day, then the delivery, again, this is live. Sorry, it's not applicable. That you can disregard that last sentence. So with that, that is my portion of the presentation today. And I am going to throw it over to my colleague, Laura Buschnyj, who handles things from our clearinghouse, and look forward to any questions that we get at the end of the presentation.
Thank you, Jim, for that great overview of the live cattle and the carcass delivery specification. I find it real interesting that 56 years ago, when we started the cattle contract, that weight range was 1,000 to 1,350, and now we're 56 years down the road, and here in February we're going to be raising that upper limit to 1,600. That just shows the progress that we've made in the U.S. cattle industry as far as the cattle being more efficient and converting and putting more pounds on, and more ultimately resulting in more total pounds of red meat for American consumers. So I really appreciate you going through that. At this time, I would like to introduce our last and our final speaker tonight. Our last and final speaker tonight is Miss Laura Buschnyj. Ms. Bushny currently serves as the Director of the Clearing Deliveries and Risk. She is responsible for managing the physical delivery settlement and risk of products for CME Group. Ms. Bushny is responsible for collaborating with stakeholders and business teams, designing, developing, and implementing solutions for physical delivery settlements and physical risk management frameworks, as well as managing the settlement and risk of all physical delivery products. She has been with the CME Group for over 26 years, working across various disciplines, including customer service administration, business analysis, and management. At this time, please welcome Ms. Laura Buschnyj.
Hi, I am Laura Buschnyj, the Director of Clearing Deliveries and Risk. I oversee the physical settlement of all asset groups at CME Group such as grain, metal, energy, FX, interest rates, agricultural, and forest products. The physical settlement of any product is as unique as the product itself. Our delivery processes, risk management, and systems are designed to handle the uniqueness of each of the products. The main system used for inventory management and deliveries is Deliveries Plus. Today, I will focus the discussion on live cattle deliveries and discuss the requirements, delivery process, Deliveries Plus, and the interplay of the individuals and Deliveries Plus involved in the delivery process. Let's begin with a review of some general information about the live cattle contract. The rules governing the live cattle contract are available in the CME Group Chapter 101 and Delivery Facilities and Procedures located in Chapter 7. All processes are built around these rules. Currently, for the live cattle contract, a contract is 40,000 pounds with an allowable variance plus or minus of 5%, producing 65% choice, 35% select grade live steers or live heifers. There are 15 different live delivery points and 12 slaughter plants available for live or carcass delivery. For any given live delivery point, there are multiple slaughter plants associated to the live location. If a seller's feedlot is within 225 road miles of an approved slaughter plant, and that plant is not part of the slaughter plant, may be associated with the live location, I should say, the slaughter plant may be added to Deliveries Plus to allow the buyer an additional delivery location option for delivery. This information can be updated as needed by the seller's clearing member. On any eligible intent day, a seller may elect to tender cattle for delivery. In order to submit an intent to deliver, the seller must ensure the livestock yard can accommodate the live delivery on the live delivery date and for the quantity the seller wants to submit for an intent. A common reason why a livestock yard cannot accommodate a live delivery is due to auctions at the livestock yard or quantity restrictions. CME produces a schedule of blackout days due to auctions per location available on cmegroup.com to allow sellers the ability to quickly see if the desired location is unavailable for the live date based on their location. CME also provides the capacity limits per stockyard at the end of Chapter 7 of the CME Rulebook. If the livestock yard is available, the seller must contact the livestock yard and obtain the additional approval for them. The name and telephone number of the person at the livestock yard providing the authorization is required for submission to deliveries when submitting an intention to deliver. There are multiple reasons why the additional approval, such as the livestock yard, may have a unique situation where they cannot accommodate the live delivery, or there's a special auction being held on the designated date. This additional check helps to ensure a seamless delivery process. Once the checks are completed with the designated livestock yard, the seller must complete and submit to deliveries through their clearing member affidavits attesting to the cattle's country of origin and feeding of the cattle. If delivering heifers, there are 2 additional heifer-specific estrus-suppressing progestin feeding additive and open heifer call affidavits required. The seller, if submitting an intent for one location and for a quantity between 2 and 10 contracts of cattle, must also indicate if they would allow a large lot delivery. The large lot delivery allows, if there is a carcass delivery, for more than 1 contract's worth of cattle to be grouped together for processing at the slaughter plant. If the seller allows a large lot delivery, there is 1 buyer assigned the cattle, the buyer wants carcass delivery and agrees to a large lot delivery, only then will a carcass delivery occur via large lot. If the seller does not complete the documentation and submit to deliveries through their clearing member, deliveries will deny the intention until all completed documentation is received. It is always better to get the checks and documentation in place earlier in the day than later. If an intent is submitted earlier in the day and the seller decides prior to the intent cutoff of 3 p.m. they do not want to tender cattle, the intent can always be deleted. The buyer's responsibilities compared to the seller prior to the assignment is far less than the seller. First and foremost, if a long is still in the market beginning on the first intent day, they need to ensure they can take delivery of a load of cattle. The first intent day is the first possible day a long can be assigned a delivery. The notice day of any given contract is simply the day in which a buyer is considered notified of their delivery, and in most contracts, when invoices are made available. It is a common mistake that the notice day is the first day a long can be assigned a delivery when it is really the first intent day. Deliveries creates a monthly delivery date memorandum that provides delivery information for CME Group's deliverable product that is available as a clearinghouse advisory notice. This information is also available as a calendar in a few different locations on cmegroup.com. Anyone interested in subscribing to the notices or obtaining further information on the location of this information is free to reach out to us, post the webinar, and we can provide you that information. In addition to being able to take delivery during the cattle delivery month, longs need to ensure their long dates are correct because the assignment of live cattle is based on the earliest open long date established by the longs in the market. If anyone wants to know what the earliest open long date is, the information is available on the delivery notice served reports available on cmegroup.com. The date will be designated with a partly through or NCO. Partly through indicates positions have been assigned or traded out of, and there are still long positions holders with that date. NCO indicates there are no contracts open and all positions have either been traded out or assigned. The delivery notice served reports are run every day at approximately 3:30 p.m. during the cattle delivery month until contract reaches an NCO status. The following couple diagrams goes through briefly the live cattle delivery cycle. I will walk through the process from beginning to end, from an intent to a delivery. The delivery of a live contract of live cattle is a multi-day process involving many different groups of people sharing information and updates throughout the process. On an intent day, sellers provide instructions to their clearing members requesting to submit an intent by 3 p.m. Central Time. The intent is the instruction that determines whether there will be a delivery assignment for that day. Buyers who were assigned cattle on the previous day's intent day may elect to retender the cattle contract by 3 p.m. Central Time as well. Retenders are assessed a $400 fee per contract of cattle retendered. Cattle may only be retendered twice. Remember, when an intent for cattle is submitted, it has one predetermined live delivery date that does not change. And with each retender, the window becomes shorter for the buyer to choose between a carcass or live delivery. Any buyer assigned cattle that was retendered twice must take delivery. Shortly after 3 p.m., Deliveries makes available the live cattle posting report on cmegroup.com. Providing customers with the total number of intents and or retenders, the location of the intents and retenders, quantity, type of cattle, heifers or steers, and discount. Between 3 and 3:30 p.m., customers may instruct their clearing members to submit a demand or reclaim for cattle. A demand is a long's request for cattle at a specific location, discount, and or type. A reclaim is a short request who has established a long position to reclaim the cattle retendered. Any demands or reclaims must be submitted prior to 3:30 p.m. Central Time. At 3:30 p.m., Deliveries will process the assignment, taking into account any demands or reclaims, satisfying any demands over a reclaim. After an assignment is completed, firm notification reports are made available to clearing members, providing details and initial payment obligations. Buyers are required to submit initial payment obligations by 12 noon the business day following the day of assignment. Retender payments are processed minus any applicable fees the business day following the day of retender. Now, assuming a contract of cattle goes through delivery, the buyer decides whether they will take the delivery live or carcass. A cattle contract has one predetermined live date, which is the 8th business day following the day of tender prior to the last trading day. If the intention was submitted between the last trading day and last intent day, the live delivery date will be between the 8th and 11th business days, which is determined by the seller following the last trading day. A buyer electing a carcass grading must contact the slaughter plant to discuss the delivery and confirm availability. Once they obtain the authorization from the slaughter plant, the buyer provides instructions to their clearing member at least 3 business days prior to the requested delivery date at the slaughter plant. The clearing member will submit this information to Deliveries Plus, which will trigger alerts to the seller's clearing member, deliveries, and USDA. The seller's clearing member will notify their customer, and the customer will make necessary trucking and delivery arrangements with the slaughter plant for arrival between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. local time on the day of slaughter. At the same time, the USDA can coordinate a USDA grader to be present at the slaughter plant for the visual inspection of the cattle. Once the seller has their delivery time established, they will share this information with their clearing member no later than 3 p.m. 2 business days prior to the scheduled slaughter date, and the clearing member will submit the information into Deliveries Plus, which triggers notifications to the buyer's clearing member, deliveries, and USDA. If the buyer elects a live delivery, the buyer will instruct their clearing member, and the clearing member will submit their request in Deliveries Plus. As with the carcass request, notifications are triggered to the clearing members, and deliveries notify the USDA of any upcoming live delivery. On a live delivery date, there is a lot of moving parts. The seller is responsible to ensure live cattle are confined in a secured pen at the approved livestock yard prior to 9 a.m. local time on the day of delivery. In addition, the cattle must stand without feed, however, should receive water during the interval between 9 a.m. and grading. However, in no event shall the cattle receive feed or water during the interval between grading and weighing. In an instance where there are more deliveries than can be conveniently graded and weighed, the clearinghouse president, in coordination with the USDA, may allow grading and weighing after 2 p.m. local time on the business day preceding the delivery date. If, in the opinion of the USDA grader, the seller fails to present a deliverable load of steers or heifers, the seller will be penalized $1,200 per contract per business day of cattle until a proper delivery is made. If, in the opinion of the USDA grader, the seller fails to promptly sort the cattle, the seller will be penalized $600 per load of cattle. If the buyer or his agent delay, disrupt, question the judgment of the USDA, or otherwise interfere with the delivery process, the buyer will be penalized $1,200 per load of cattle. It is also important to note, all delivery matters, such as grading results or penalties, the determination is made by the USDA grader shall be final and binding. Once cattle passes the USDA's preliminary inspection, ensuring the cattle are healthy, merchantable, and in good condition, the USDA will inspect and weigh cattle and submit the cattle results to deliveries. Deliveries will provide the results to the clearing members and contact the stockyard to release the cattle to the buyer's clearing member. The buyer's clearing member will then contact the livestock yard and release the cattle to the underlying customer who is at the yard awaiting the release of the cattle. Depending on the number of live deliveries for a given day, Deliveries may receive results in groups instead of waiting for all the results to come in. This helps to ensure cattle are being released as soon as operationally possible to customers. Once cattle results are received, deliveries will enter the results in Deliveries Plus, which will calculate the weight, yield, quantity, and quality deviations for the invoice. All adjustments and deviations are based on the settlement price at the time the intent was tendered for delivery. The invoice will also indicate any penalties and fees. For a live delivery, the USDA fee is $100 per contract payable by the seller. Once invoices are completed, the invoices are made available to the clearing members to distribute to their customers. Depending on the time of day in which invoices are created, any additional due from buyers or sellers will either be requested the same day or next day to be sent to delivery. Once deliveries receive the funds, payments to sellers and or buyers will be made, completing the delivery. For a carcass delivery, there is a two-step process to complete a delivery. The first step is the visual grading conducted when the cattle arrive at the slaughter plant. When the cattle arrive at the slaughter plant, a USDA grader is present to conduct a visual grading and weighing. The visual grading ensures the cattle are of proper weight, healthy, merchantable, in satisfactory condition, that there are no predominance of dairy breeding present, or a prominent hump exceeding 2 inches in the lean muscle is present. If any cattle do not pass the visual inspection, they will be removed from the unit. If the removal of animals causes the lot to fall below the 5% tolerance, the seller is responsible for replacing the removed animals until the minimum live weight is achieved. The results of the visual grading are communicated to delivery, and if the cattle pass the visual inspection, deliveries will release 90% of the seller's proceeds to the seller's clearing member. In the opinion of the USDA, the seller fails to present a deliverable load of steers or heifers, the seller will be penalized $600 per business day per load until a deliverable load is presented. Once the cattle are slaughtered, the carcass grading is completed within 3 business days of slaughter. Results of the grading are sent to deliveries for final processing. Deliveries will enter grading results in Deliveries Plus, which will calculate the weight, yield, quantity, and quality deviations for the invoice. All adjustments and deviations are based on the settlement price at the time the intent was tendered for delivery. The invoice will also indicate any penalties and fees. For a carcass delivery, the USDA fee is $100 for sellers and $250 for buyers. The buyer is also assessed the standard freight rate per mile for each additional mile the cattle are hauled over and beyond the distance between the feedlot and the livestock yard. Once invoices are completed, the invoices are made available to the clearing members to distribute to their customers. Depending on the time of day in which invoices are created, any additional due from the buyers or sellers will be requested the same day or the next business day to be sent to delivery. Once deliveries receives the funds, the payments to sellers and buyers will be made, completing the delivery. Whether a delivery is live or carcass, the cattle delivery process from intent to delivery and payment complete involves multiple steps requiring coordinated effort between customers, clearing members, USDA, and deliveries to have a successful delivery. We hope the information presented today was helpful and would like to open it up for any questions.
I want to go ahead and proceed with tonight's event. The next item of business that I would like to share with you, you heard tonight in several of the speakers, they mentioned several different USDA market reports that are used for the settlement of the live cattle contract. And I want to make you aware of the USDA LMR cattle price reporting guide. This is an in-depth guide looking at the LMR, the livestock mandatory reporting cattle price reports. AMS currently publishes 24 daily and 20 weekly reports each week. And if you would go to the website listed on the screen, you can look at this reporting guide and get an in-depth dive of the LMR cattle price reports. I am going to go ahead and move over to our question and answer session. At this time, I'll ask the panelists to please turn on their cameras, and we will work through the questions as they come through the question and answer. I would like to go ahead and address the first question that came in, the question and answer session. The question was, are we confusing graders with inspectors? And what I would like to say is, when the certification process, whether it's a live delivery or a carcasses delivery, is performed by a USDA grader, which is a QAD meat grader for a carcass delivery, or a livestock, poultry, and grain market news livestock grader. I'll go ahead and turn it over to Jim Sullivan, as he will address any other questions that have come through the chat.
Thanks, Jody. I guess it's just another sign of 2020 that, you know, technology won't work even when you plan ahead. But that's good to know that you'll have those presentations available for people that want to view them at a later time. So we've got a couple questions here that we're going to go through. I was going to have Laura Buschnyj start with a few of them, and then I'll address some as well. Laura, are you there? Do you see Jody? Is Laura muted?
Jim, you're fading in and out.
I was going to have Laura address some of the questions, but I can kick it off here. So first one, if a load of cattle fails to arrive at the delivery location by the 9 a.m. deadline, the question is, can the load be evaluated or certified on the same day, or does it have to wait until the following day? And the answer is yes, you can still proceed with that delivery as long as the USDA grader is okay with going forward and can accommodate. However, since they were late, again, I mentioned in my portion, 9 a.m. means 9 a.m. So even though you were there late and the USDA said we're still fine to go ahead, you're going to be charged the failure to present fee. Another question, grading and weighing. Oh, Laura, you're there?
Yes, I'm here. I was finally able to unmute. I can take the next question.
Oh, cool.
So the next question was to explain, grading and weighing shall be done on the day of delivery unless more deliveries are indicated than can be conveniently graded and weighed on the intended delivery date. So the question was to explain in such case that the president may allow grading and weighing after 2 p.m. local time on the day preceding delivery. So there have been a few instances in the past where we have been pre-advised of some extreme weather conditions. And so with coordination with all the counterparties that were involved in the delivery and the USDA, we needed to make a judgment call, and we let the deliveries proceed on that preceding day. So it helped the delivery to go through smoothly. Another question that came through, can you explain the proper procedures to follow if the short fails to deliver enough cattle to meet the number of contracts tendered? Example, if 10 loads were tendered and only 8 loads were accepted. So normally what happens is that the shorts bring extra cattle to make up for any potential shortfalls. However, if they do not do that and it does not meet the specs, the seller must produce the additional cattle Ideally, they do it on the next business day because each day that they do not present the cattle, there is a penalty fee assessed. So in most instances, you'll see the cattle being delivered the next business day. There's only been very rarely times where it's exceeded one day. Another question that came through, at what point in the process does the animal change ownership? So as far as the changing of the ownership, when it comes to title of cattle passed to the buyer when the delivered unit for carcass is weighed and placed in the holding pen for slaughter. When it's for a live delivery, it'll occur when it's placed in the buyer's holding pen. However, there's an additional little step with the long holders. With the long holders, what'll happen is that once the cattle have once the cattle have been graded, the livestock yard will contact deliveries and, and give us the results. We will call them and release those cattle to the long clearing members. And then the long clearing members will call the stockyard and actually release it to the underlying customer.
Thanks, Laura. I got a question.
Sure. Okay.
Did you want to keep going, or was there one?
No, go ahead.
Currently, the par contract weight is 40,000 pounds. Have there been requests to increase that to 50,000? I have heard this before, once or twice, but it's never been seriously considered, and it's not something that I really hear. Again, I've only heard it a handful of times. And then one more question, actually, that I saw come in on the live. It looks like Tina Colby. Hi, Tina. Is there any chance of possibly changing delivery locations and maybe trying to pick up new locations virtually using drones? That's possible. We have a process. Obviously USDA is involved. USDA's opinion and their look and their certification. Also, though, our market regs registrar office has an application process. They have an inspection process. And I think we could possibly if we're able to get a USDA grader to there and view it, coupled with drone footage, maybe we could accept that to approve a new facility. But I just don't know yet. So, long story short, maybe is the answer to that one. Laura, you want to get a couple more questions? Don't know if Laura dropped off there. Look like, let's see here, I got another one.
I'm back, Jim. I'm sorry. There's just there's a delay. I apologize. Yes. So one of the next questions that came through was to explain the difference between a tender versus retender. In addition, what happens if a contract is not demanded? So a tender is simply a new request to deliver cattle from a specific location. A retender is actually, it's a redelivery of an intent from a prior day. So an intent can only be retendered twice. And so if at that second retender, if it's not, whoever owns it, if it's not demanded, must take delivery of that cattle. And regardless of whether or not, if there's no demand or there's no reclaim for the cattle, the cattle simply will have to go through delivery by the buyer who was assigned the delivery. Jen, did you want to take the next one?
Sure. Looks like, so there's a question, for large lot deliveries, there is the ability to designate a large lot. So up to 10 contracts, you wouldn't have to sort them into units of 40,000 pounds. It could just be one continuous, so you'd have to hit 400,000 pounds. Question is large lot an option for when you are delivering on a live basis? And the answer is no. There have been a few people that have asked about that before, but we do not allow large lots for live delivery. Another question, what role does live delivery play in the live, oh, I'm sorry. What role does the live delivery point play in the delivery process? Obviously, they play a very important role in that they facilitate the delivery. They've gone through an inspection process. They're subject to an annual reapplication process, and then they're obviously paid for facilitating the delivery. So they're very important, obviously. Next question, following up on that, how does a location become a live delivery point? Again, there is a process. They have to be approved by CME's registrar, clearing, and USDA. So they have to have adequate facilities. They got to have scales. They got to have access to water. They got to have the appropriate pens. Everything needs to be in order. And so you file an application with our registrar department. It's posted for the public to see, and then there's an inspection process before it can be onboarded. And then also together with USDA, they determine the maximum amount of loads that can be accommodated at the facility. Another one. I see a live question came in here. The communications, the call to release or transfer ownership, is that electronically done, or is it done by a human actually calling on the phone, Laura? How does that work?
I was unmuted. Okay. Yes. Can you hear me?
Yep.
So as far as releasing the cattle, it's actually done by a call. We don't do it electronically. We want to make sure that we get a live person on the other line to make those releases.
Got it. Thanks. Next question. Can a feedlot be a delivery point, or does it have to be an auction location? Feedlots cannot be approved as a delivery location. Again, that's one of those things that has been talked about in the past, but it is not allowed currently. Next question. If a delivery point changes ownership, does the new owner have to reapply? Answer is yes there. I know that auction barns, change ownership, not all the time, but it's kind of common. What if a delivery point closes and is no longer open for business? Are they automatically ineligible as a live delivery location? So if one of our approved delivery yards closes, as soon as we are notified, we will make them ineligible in our system. And so then were you to go in there, you wouldn't be able to access it. Also, keep in mind that if you're the short and you're the seller, the first step in the process is you have to contact that facility and secure the date and the time and all of that stuff with them. So if a place is closed, you're going to call there. You're not going to be able to get someone to answer and secure that for you. Carcass question here. Are all beef packing plants eligible for carcass delivery? The answer there is no. Just like for live delivery, we have certain locations, plants that are approved for carcass delivery. All of the live and carcass delivery locations are located at the end of CME Rulebook Chapter 7. It's actually a link that goes to a spreadsheet that has the location names, the numbers, and also the number of loads they can accommodate each day. And with that, I don't see any more questions coming in here. Jody, you got any more that you wanted to address here?
Yes, Jim, we had one question come in. I'm sorry you didn't see it. Has there been any talk about raising the upper limit on the heifers? I know in February of 2021, we'll be raising the upper limit of steers. Has there been any talk of raising the upper limit of heifers?
There's been talk, but there's no plans currently to raise that. As you know, with the live cattle contract, it's something that's always changing. So it's something that could happen in the future. But for now, we have some, like I went through in my deck, we have quite a few changes set to take effect in February of 2021. So that's where we're at for now. I did remember there's one question that came through that I didn't get to, basically asking what hot yield is. So Jody, what is the hot yield is after slaughter, what that carcass yields once the hide has been removed and all of the inedible parts, right? And except for the bones. But what is the technical definition from the USDA's standpoint on hot yield?
Hot yield is basically the difference between the live weight and the carcass weight, minus the viscera and the hide. After the hide and offal have been removed, they'll get an in-depth, real in-depth overview of hot yield in part 3 of our web series. There was one other question that come in, Jim, that I would like to ask. I know that currently the delivery point in South Dakota receives a discount. Has there been any talk or thought of removing that discount in South Dakota? You must have froze.
Continue to mind.
Jim, you must have froze or something happened to your microphone.
Jody, we lost them both, but I'm here.
Okay, Sarah, can you address the question?
About which one?
So the question that was asked is there any thought of removing the discount in South Dakota or expanding into Iowa as far as expanding delivery points into Iowa?
Oh, expanding delivery points. I mean, we're always willing to take a look at it. I mean, it depends on the facility and honestly the need for it. There is currently, we are not evaluating whether or not we need to eliminate the discount at Worthing because we feel like it's been effective and has accomplished what it was intended to.
Okay. Good deal. Good deal. Jim,
I got kicked out there.
You made it back. You made it back.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I was saying the discount to Worthing for October is something to monitor, and like anything else with the contract, should we get to a point that we feel we should remove it, we'll do that. If there's a point that we need to change that discount, we will do that as well. But so far, deliveries tendered to Worthing in the October time period have still, in our view, warranted that discount.
Okay. Let me see. Let's give them just a few minutes to see if there's any more questions that come through. Right now, I think we've exhausted all of our questions. Or do you have another one there, Jim, that you're seeing?
I think I got through the ones that came through.
Okay. What about I remember seeing a question about, in the rule book, it talks about that the grading and weighing can happen after 2 o'clock at local time on a preceding day. Can you explain that? If the time frame is they're supposed to be there by 9 o'clock, then what would warrant them to be able to be graded and weighed after 2 p.m.?
So I think Laura spoke to that earlier. You know, if there are unusual circumstances that occur, which I would assume is most likely weather related, that would be something where you know, a different time frame can be accommodated, but it's not the norm.
Okay, good deal. Well, it looks like that pretty much exhausts all of our questions for this evening. I sure appreciate Jim and Laura and Sarah for being part of this webinar series and being available tonight to answer these questions live.
Thanks for having us, Jody.
Happy to be here, Jody. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to apologize to everyone for the technical difficulties that we have experienced tonight. Hopefully we can get those addressed before we move on to our next session. And I want to remind everybody that there is a survey. You will be receiving a follow-up email with a survey, or if you would like to go ahead and fill out that survey, you can use your smartphone by turning on the camera, holding it up to the QR code in the upper left-hand corner. You'll receive a link to SurveyMonkey, and just simply fill out the survey. Then again, I really apologize for the technical issues. We will work on getting those taken care of before our next session, which I'm excited to say will be December 1st from 6 to 8 p.m. Central Time, or 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Session 2 will be hosted by Colorado State University and the Agriculture Marketing Service, and the topic that will be covered will be the science behind the grade. You'll get an in-depth look at how anatomy and physiology and biology impacts production and performance and enhances quality and acceptability. We hope you enjoyed this webinar, and we look forward to seeing you at future webinars for this series. May you have a blessed evening, a safe weekend, and a blessed holiday. We'll see you in 2 weeks.